Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. I'm Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers, co-host Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I promise we will keep this entertaining. I can probably already make a bold statement that you're going to learn something as well. We have a great guest lined up that we're going to bring in here in a second. If you're a return viewer, follower, listener, watcher, thanks again for all your support. We certainly couldn't do it without you. Today's guest, who we're going to introduce in a second, is Dan Breslin. I actually am familiar with Dan because we've crossed paths many times earlier on in my hard money banking career, as we expanded into the Philadelphia market, which I believe is where he originally started his business, Diamond Equity Investment. So we're going to hear him share that story here shortly, and where he is today compared to how he started his pretty large real estate investment company.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited to have him on. So that'll be fun. But guys, if you get any value out of the show, please feel free to share it. We don't care about the likes or the subscribes. The best compliment we can give our guests are the shares, whether that's sharing it on social or just sharing it with a friend for someone that you think can find value in the show. We like bringing on people that are actually doing deals, not gurus, people that are like us, that are actually out there grinding and hearing the similar stories. That's what it's all about. So enough about us. Let's bring Dan in and get this ball rolling. What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Oh, we're catching up out here on the East Coast. It's a little windy and cold. So I'm sure that same for you where you are, and enjoying the day. So
yeah,
Dan,
yeah,
so
you went from a cold winter to a colder winter, I hear. You went from Philly to Chicago.
Yeah. Philly to Chicago. It's like 14 degrees out here. The lake is freezing up and there's like clouds coming off because it's so cold. Chicago gets cold. Can't wait to spend some time in Florida here.
Can't blame you there. How did you take your real estate career from Philly to Chicago? How'd you get started?
Yeah, it's probably helpful to understand the context of some of my journey. So I got in the business in 2006, did a wholesale deal, made $6,000. That was the deal that really changed my life because it was like, holy crap, it's actually happening. I had some challenges with drugs and alcohol along my whole life, since I was probably in my mid-teens. In 2006, 2007, 2008, at that time, I was like clean, kind of doing the right thing. I slipped up in 2008 as the market was crashing, and I crashed along with it up until 2012 when I finally returned back to the program of living clean and sober. And, thank God I've been now, I guess that's 12 years, coming up on 13 years without a drink or drugs. So that's been what made all the difference. But during that time, 2006, 2005, I had a little bit of trouble with the law at that time. And my daughter and her mom moved from Philly to Chicago. So it was always my dream to figure out a way to live in Chicago and establish myself. And that dream, hung on for that 6, 7, 8, 9 years until 2015, when I finally was like, all right, I got, a little money in the bank. I'm going to get going. Business is stable in Philly. And if it all burns to the ground in Philly and there is no more Philly Diamond Equity, so be it. I'll figure it out when I get to Chicago. I have faith it'll work out. And that was why I moved to Chicago, and I established a business with a partner, Aaron Lockhart, out here. Philly continued to sustain and grow, and we intentionally entered the Atlanta market after that because I figured out that it's a pretty big country and it's cool to do deals in exciting markets. We were in and out of probably 5 other markets that didn't really work well. Over the years, we never got an edge, but the 3 legs of the stool right now for Diamond Equity are Chicago, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. And we do about 100 deals a year in each of those markets. And we buy, operate, value add commercial real estate, probably 2 to 4 hour drive radius from any one of those cities. Although I'm not opposed to doing something that I have to take a plane ride if it's a significant and substantial enough deal.
So when you started in Philly, so that was 2012, call it, give or take. How did that look? Was the operation just, wholesaling at the time? Obviously 2012, when we were in it in real time, it never felt like this. But looking back, it's like, damn, we're in real estate at a good time. Everything just went up. And instead of, us wholesaling properties or doing stuff, we probably should bought and hold some of those darn things, but that's okay. So was the initial game plan was like, hey, I'm going to enter this space maybe as a one-man band and just start wholesaling some properties and kind of see what direction it's going to go in?
So that was 06 for me.
Okay, 06.
And I made money flipping houses, and I got in. And when I got in 06, I'm like, oh my God, these prices are just way too high. I can feel it. It's overvalued. This thing is peaking. This is trouble. We were able to get in and out of plenty of them in those first couple years until 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe 11 was probably what I would say felt like the real bottom for me. And I'd done like these sporadic handful of deals, totally a one-man band. I mean, I didn't have this great plan and vision. I wasn't like, I evaluated this market and I want to enter this business because there's a total addressable market of such and such. It was kind of like, I made good money on some deals flipping houses and I couldn't find any other better way to pay my child support. Right. And then, I was fortunate enough to have, an endless stream of high quality partners that have come along. Many of them are still on the team now. And my motivation for like continuing to get up and grind is to like continue to find a way to expand the opportunity for those partners that I'm in business with. So it's not like, I got this net worth goal. I want to do a $10 million deal. It's like, all right, we got this team. Now, how do we make sure everyone's fed, but that there's also the next level for every person who's like willing to develop the skill set, mindset, and the beliefs to like get to that next level. That's where we're at today.
Yeah, and like getting to that next level, and you brought it up early on in, as you were telling us about your career, you talked about, some struggles with, either drug or alcohol and getting clean and living that life. A lot of our employees in our company come from that space, and it's just interesting to see how many of those principles do you see translate into your daily life of operating a business and like taking on shit that just straight up sucks, right? I think that's the best way probably to put it. But like, how do you utilize what you went through to be able to have a successful business today?
I think there's a level of resilience that comes from anyone who's had to overcome any kind of a real hardship, something substantial. That could be going bankrupt. That could be somebody, a business partner swindled you, took the bank accounts and disappeared. It could be a death of a loved one that's close. It could be losing your house to a foreclosure. It could be overcoming cancer or some other kind of health challenge. So I think people who have gone through things like that in their lives, and are able to get to the other side have a certain resilience factor, as long as they've been able to frame and position it that way and see it as like, okay, I'm on the other side now. Like for me, I'm in bonus season of life. Like it wasn't like, I did a little, drinking. No, it was like, I can't believe I'm alive. This must be heaven. And I'm in like bonus season of life. And I was able to like get through that with the help of God. And I think there's kind of two pieces of it for me. The spiritual strength comes from my relationship with God and spending time in the Word, reading the Bible, and like working on my spirit. The 12 steps that you find in the 12-step programs came from the Oxford group way back. So there are 12 steps for somebody that was like a Christian-based spiritual program, the Oxford group. But going through those 12 steps, that wasn't designed for people to get off drugs and alcohol. It was never designed for, AA is going to adopt the 12 steps and create them. They were written before that so people could have a more centered existence in life and live in a spiritually, congruent and effective manner and show up in life as a better person. And that was what the 12 steps were for. And I think the people who are fortunate enough to put some time between now and the last time they used the drugs or alcohol and actually like work through those 12 steps, they show up and they're better employees. They're better people. They're self-aware. They realize they fucked up and they apologize to the person they fucked up the next day. It's not like this rift occurs and these two partners got to split for 30 years before, before one guy realizes he kind of, did the other dirty. So I think living your life in a way that's like congruent to the 12 steps is effective. And I think that's one of the reasons that the people who really grasp the program and come from that kind of a background specifically can make really, really great friends, family members, and business partners and employees.
Yeah, and I think there's a level of maturity that comes side by side with that, right? Like Jason and I talk a lot about this, like the success that we have today, and maybe even the failures that we have today. When we first started, we couldn't handle that, right? And as you grow in business, you can start to navigate issues, successes, situations that you have the maturity level. And I think that's a lot what I see. And you bring up being great employees, great people, those who truly embrace it and are able to get clean. I think you're 1,000% right. They went through the adversity of life, and now they're like, hey man, I'm here, I'm on bonus time, I'm going to enjoy it, I'm going to live it out. Some people choose to do it through God, other people just choose to do it, hey, I'm here and I'm surviving, and that's what it is. So it's real interesting to see, because I relate a lot of that back to the maturity level of even just being a business owner and coming across large sums of money and being like, well, what do you do with it? I'm in business for a year. Oh, let's go party. No, that's for the future, man. You need to save that money and get to the next level.
I think that's one of the probably biggest traps that I see in the real estate business, is the large sums of money that come. If you have someone making 50, 60 grand a year doing whatever, accounting somewhere, and they flip a house, they get a little lucky, sell it in the spring market, they make 85 grand. The money can be a little bit problematic. For me, it turned into a relapse, and I started to use drugs and alcohol again back in 2008 when I slipped. Other people will take their foot off the gas and not make the same phone calls, not work with the same tenacity when a big win or a couple big wins come in. And I think that robs them of the momentum for their business long term if they can't kind of get a handle on what I call pop champagne mentality. Whenever a large deal closes within our organization, I make a point to pick the phone up and call the rep who worked on that deal specifically. And it's like, all right, let's make sure we're grounded. We're not going to go schedule a month-long vacation in Spain just because you put a big check. Like, there's a lot of keeping ourselves on the ground when we have the big win, so that we keep on doing the things, taking the actions, making the decisions that got us that result in the first place.
Yeah, that's good advice. I think that's hard to be disciplined about, especially for folks that are immature or younger in age, just because, it's like, hey, I've never had this much money in my life, or, you forget, I don't know, you forget on it. And I think that's why a lot of successful people are disciplined of like, hey, this goes into this bucket, this goes into this bucket, this goes into this bucket. And if you're going to quote unquote spend it on an investment, spend it on an asset, spend it on something that's not completely liquid again, that's going to earn you some dividends, turn into some passive income. So talking about, I like that tip of calling that partner or employee and having a conversation, because I think that's, as a manager or business owner, I think that's, very good advice. So it seems like you have a few dozen employees / partners. Obviously that didn't happen overnight, growing a team like that. Do you have any advice related to, hiring or building culture, or something that you kind of have stuck with over the years to kind of create a really good, solid team? I think a lot of real estate investors, a lot of them that are either one-man bands, or them and their partner, them and their spouse, or maybe they have an employee here and there, they try to scale. And I think hiring employees and managing employees is scary for people in general. They feel like, especially in a business like this, that they're just going to lose too much control on it. Like, do you have maybe like one or two tips of what you've done in order to create really good relationships with your partners and employees?
Yeah. Number one and number two. Number one, you have to find a way to make sure that the incentives are aligned. And let's say the size of the deal goes up, can the incentives still remain aligned? So making sure everyone gets a fair shake is real important for what they're doing. And then number two, I think it's important to have the best of your ability, right? I don't really have the ability to create $1 million a year positions, but somewhere between 0 and $1 million, there's a position where one person can develop a new set of skills and climb the ladder, if you will. I like business partners without a salary there. Anytime there's a salary, an admin staff is going to need a salary. The incentives are going to be matched that way. Maybe there's some year-end bonuses and things like that. And there's probably, for the right person who wanted to kind of like level up and get a new skill set, an admin person could go to a commercial leasing specialist, right? That wouldn't be a huge leap. I don't know if the same admin would be able to go and be an acquisition manager who's going to run around the country making deals on our behalf. That may be a little farther outside the skill set for someone at that level of the company to kind of jump up to the next level. But it's not out of the question, right? What happens in a 5 or a 10-year period is a person can read a particular set of books, do some self-education, have the right conversations, and continue looking for ways to add greater and greater value. And at some point, that person, it may take a year, it may take 5, may take 17 years. And suddenly this person's able to like leap to the next position, have a real breakthrough in the value that they're able to create. And maybe that's within our organization, and maybe that's not within our organization. I think that's fine too. If this person is able to grow a skill set that turns out to be more valuable somewhere else in some other business line, some other position, like I'm all for that. But the thing that really sums up our culture is continuous growth and improvement. We want to constantly be finding the next innovative edge to run our business. Maybe that's some negotiation psychology. Maybe that's some marketing. Maybe that's the branding and imaging that we're wearing to our meetings. Maybe that's taking and forcing people to get on a Zoom call instead of just making a regular phone call. But the list is endless and it never ends. And for us, we're very conscious about creating that environment of continuous growth. And there's actually like a dopamine hit people get. So it feels good when you learn new things. It's probably like a background reason of why a lot of people stick around. It's fun, right? Like where else are you going to have a meeting where there's like 10 or 12 or maybe even 30 of the people on my team on a Zoom call discussing high level real estate strategy, where maybe we just cashed a check and it was, upper 7 figures kind of profit. Like that's exciting. And that's possible for anybody that's on that call with me. I'm sorry, upper 6 figures. Let me correct myself. And you're learning the exact details, getting a peek behind the curtain there. So I think that constant improvement, the continuous, like they're kind of like book clubs on another level, where it's like mastermind groups you hear people paying to attend. My issue with the mastermind groups you pay to attend a lot of times is that the incentives aren't always aligned. Well, I'm paying you $40,000, $50,000 to be here, but are you, I had to take XYZ to put $50,000 into the relationship. Does this person who's got 300 of us in a room have the time to really, kind of kick back where I feel like our incentives are aligned? There's probably a little disconnect there. That person's already got it. They got it figured out. Whereas when we do that in our own internal environment and the incentives are aligned, I think everybody has a chance to really bring the best of what they have, because they're also kind of benefiting equally in a sense. We're like married for the long term, and without actually being married.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the masterminds, and I don't know if you heard our open that we like bringing in real people that are doing real deals and not the gurus that are just out here trying to sell. And look, some of the gurus out there are doing deals, and they also have this knack for selling. I think it goes back to what you were saying of like they get tied too much to the financial side of things and don't remember like the human element, the goals, the incentives being aligned. Like the mastermind group we run, it's not to make money. I just want to hang out with 20 other dudes that are actually doing business, and I'll just happen to facilitate the room, mostly because I got control problems, but that's a whole nother story for another time. But I want to be in control of what we're doing and making sure it's a good time. So yeah, it's really interesting. So how do you like what
if I could while we're on that topic, I do love the mastermind groups and I'll happily pay my money. I just don't think they have the same level of, transparent sharing of the innovations that are occurring in the business from anyone coming. And that's fine. And I go to the masterminds to meet other people. And I'm hoping that I met people who could pay the $50,000 ticket to be in the room. Because if it's too low of a barrier to entry, I maybe have 9 people who did like, a half a deal each or something, versus I go into this other room and I've got, dozens of people who have $100 million portfolios plus. And maybe I'm turning out to be good friends with one of them, but we were able to kind of like have this, we had a moat around the meeting places, and you're not going to find that at the local RIA event. My old ring meetings I used to run in Philly at Manny Young Brew Pub. You're not going to really get, that caliber of talent in the room. And not that those meetings aren't valuable too, but it just depends where you want to be. And some rooms have a ticket attached, and it's well worth that investment.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And those early meetings, if you're just getting started, go there. Just go talk to other people. You might find out that, hey, there is someone in here that's killer. Like, we recently started a local meetup again, just mostly because I don't have any friends out here in Philly and I want to meet people again. But with that being said, dude, you never know who you're going to run into. Jason and I ran a huge one in Maryland. Same thing. It was like, it's good to get in the room. You find out who you want to talk to and you hang out with them, and then everyone else is just there doing their thing. A lot of people are just bullshitting in this business. And what I was going to ask you, and it's probably even true with employees and having the right culture, is you talk about incentivizing and being in the right rooms with the right people. Like, when you're looking to hire people and you're putting them through the vetting process in your company, like, how do you make sure people are aligned with the same goals as you? You got a nice size operation, so I'm sure your employee management loads a good bit. Like, how do you keep to make sure that you're hiring the right people that believe in the same belief systems that you guys have for your company?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ian. I have an executive team in the Atlanta market. It's 2 people who are running that one. I have an executive, Craig Marvel, who's running the Philadelphia region. I actually met him originally through the ring meeting, and he was the one that invited me there. So, they work. You find people who end up on the journey forever. There were certainly to this point. And then I have Aaron Lockhart, who's the executive in Chicago. So each of them is sort of managing the hiring of the admin, hiring of the acquisition managers, hiring and creating of any other positions they deem necessary to run their kind of portion of the market. And that's how this is set up. But two of the things we're really looking for to fit with our values and culture, a lot of times I'm going to ask a question like, what's the last book you read that changed your life? I'm going to gauge the answer. And the guy's like, yeah, I got such and such on my shelf, and I got such and such on my shelf. He's just giving me something that rattles off. If someone asked me that question, I would say the Bible, and here's where you do it. You read the Proverbs, you read each chapter. Today's December 12th. I read chapter 12 today. You do that each day of the month, and you repeat that again next month. And if you miss it, you just start back up on January 15th. You read chapter 15. And that's the one that changed my life. Second one in real estate that is probably my favorite, and it was a pivotal moment recommended to me by my mentor, Dan Kennedy, was Robert Ringer, Winning Through Intimidation. And you got to get the one that's out of print if you're going to go for that one. It's a story of a broker who got shafted out of some commissions when he put some really big deals together. He figured out 3 powers: legal power, image power, and real power. And he figured out how to construct his business in a manner where utilizing those 3 powers, legal power being like your attorney and your contracts. The real power is someone puts a gun to your head and asks for your car keys, you give it to them. Or it's when a buyer walks away from the table and there's 50 grand in earnest money. He's like, I don't give a shit. Keep my 50 grand. I'm out of the deal. Real power. He walks away, right? Maybe the deal's not his. He lost it. A lot of times the seller's like, oh, hang on a second, come back. And then image power is things like brand, the kind of car you pull up in, the kind of shirt you're wearing, the kind of hat you're wearing, the kind of watch you're wearing. If somebody's judging you on that, do you show up to closing with an attorney, without an attorney, right? Do you show up to do a meeting with, he would show up with 3 assistants with typewriters and set up shop in the office of the developer whose $300 million complex he was selling, put him on another level. So that one was instrumental in changing my life. That's the kind of question I'm really hoping they answer that question when I'm like, hey, what was the last book you read? Because that's going to show me, is this person already on a track of continuous growth and improvement? Or am I going to have to chase this person around to download Audible onto their phone and ask them 10 different times if they actually got through Robert Ringer's book, right? So sometimes there's a lot of more discernment in the questions I'm asking. I'm really looking for the background and weighing their answer. To keep it even simpler, though, we'll do 3 rounds of interviews, 1 on the phone, 1 in person with the executive, and then a 3rd interview with me on the phone if they pass the first 2. If they pass all 3 of those, we'll do a 4th group interview where the people in the team also get a pass-fail decision. So if they're not feeling great about someone, There will be a meeting after our candidate leaves, and anybody would have veto power there. Our goal is to raise the bar with every hire we bring on. We want someone who's like intimidating us with their skill level and with their experience. That's who we want on our team.
Yeah, it's pretty detailed. But I mean, you got experience with it because you've 35 active people on the team.
Yeah, at least
something like that. At least what I saw on your website. So how did this business model transition into buying commercial assets? Is it safe to say that was kind of the natural transition from, trying to increase asset classes, knowledge base, amount of money you can make per transaction? Do you think that was kind of the goal was, hey, we're trying to expand. You can expand by another market, or you can expand by, obviously more deals, I guess, if you haven't reached capacity, or it can expand by different types of deals, asset classes. Was that kind of the natural extension to your business when you started, involving commercial deals?
When I was a kid and I used to play in my sandbox, I remember like building shopping centers. That was like one of my most thrilling things. Oh, I'm building a shopping center as like a 7-year-old in my sandbox. So there's like a certain level of the impact that we can have in the transformation on neighborhoods and the planet and creating places that seems attractive, right? Not really the best reason perhaps to get into it, but it's more somewhat the challenge. It makes sense because there's scale. There's also risk in the scale. You're playing with bigger numbers, and you thought it was 200,000 in asphalt and it's 900,000. That's a $700,000 mistake. Happens all the time in commercial real estate. The numbers come back way different than you thought. So the challenge for me, right? I talked about that dopamine hit you get when you learn things. And so I had to kind of layer that in and just make a more challenging game for myself and find a lot more information to learn about. I want to know about lease rates. Are the lease rates going up and down? Is there cap rate compression in this asset class or that asset class? Are cap rates expanding everywhere? No? Okay, why aren't they expanding over here? So the number of problems that could keep me engaged and the level of market study and information that's out there in commercial was challenging and exciting to me. And I think 2022 early when I made the decision to ramp up our commercial real estate investments. At that same time, transaction volume was cut in half as the interest rates rose. So it's also like, okay, if this thing starts to continue to get more challenging and, inventory stays as tight as it potentially could, we want to make sure we mitigate the risk and find a way to kind of level up. And then like for me, the third reason selfishly is there's a lot of cash that had to be invested in a way that was like tax advantageous, and like what you can do to save taxes in commercial real estate is 1,000 times easier. You can buy one building, $7 million, and that's going to replace like 70 single family houses you would have to buy in that same time period when you go to save the taxes, right? It's like 70 mortgages, 70 tax bills, 70 water bills, 70 tenants, 70 to 180 toilets, right? And the list goes on. Whereas the $7 million building, maybe there's like 4 tenants in there. There's like 6 bathrooms. There's 1 roof. So one tax bill for the entire property. Like it's funny that one of my main complaints will be Philadelphia's tax bill showing up, and there's like the envelopes are pouring out of our mailbox here at the condo. It's like I'm just trying to simplify my investment with an eye toward my estate for the day when I die. I want it to be like very simple, not have the heirs someday having to try to pick through what do you evict all 90 tenants and like cover like I watched people lose 90 house portfolios to tax sale. Yep. And the heirs got maybe 20 of them out of there and sold. The rest all were gone for pennies on the dollar. So there's some simplicity, but there's some scale. At the same time, there's a shitload of complexity and challenge, and we're creating transformation at scale in what we're doing in commercial real estate.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and it's not only scale, but it's capital investors, it's your own cash being able to plug it in. It's tenfold easy to get a $5 million loan than it is a $100,000 loan on some crappy house in the heart of West Baltimore or Philadelphia or whatever city you pick in the United States, right? And not to mention, it allows you to travel the country. It allows you to expand your horizons. And I really think it for me anyway, and Jason, I don't know how you feel about on the lending side, and Dan, I'll be interested. Your opinion is, I just think the creative juices flow so much better in the commercial side of the world. It's like, okay, you got to sell storage property. There's multiple places to pick up money. You got a shithole building and you want to turn it around. Well, how do you do it? I got all these different tenants that I can play with. I can condo it. I can just fix it up and sell it. I can get this lender to put this type of equity in the deal. I just feel like the creative juices are so much better. And I enjoy it. I don't know how you boys feel.
I agree. I mean, that's the majority of my focus every day. And it starts with, it starts with the economics. I think that's a safe assessment, right? They're bigger transactions. There's more money that could be made through that. And yes, they're more complex. If you structure them right, at least what I believe on the lending side is I can, in essence, structure our risk based off the collateral with less risk than, a residential property. So even though it's a bigger transaction, and yes, potentially someone might get scared that there's more risk because it's a $2 million deal, not a $200,000 deal. I could risk a $2 million loss instead of a $200,000 loss. I would state that I think they're potentially less riskier.
Yeah, you can move the needle of the value a lot further, a lot faster too. You're not constrained by comparable sales in the neighborhood. For example, you'll build your flex deal on, we'll talk about my 30,000 square foot Memphis deal. I have it for lease for $87.50 a month. I got 9-acre parcel, 4-acre laydown yard, 30,000 square foot warehouse. I'm going to do some work and really spruce the thing up and make it nice. But at the $87.50 a month, it's probably $1.2 million valuation. When I do it nice, I'm having delusional optimism a little bit. I'm going to put in a few $100,000, right? I'm like, hey, instead of $350 a foot, maybe I get $450 a foot or $475 a foot, because I have this fenced laydown yard, and this just makes a lot of sense for the right person. They're like, fine, it's $12,000 a month, $13,000 a month, whatever I end up at. Not a big difference from 9 to 13 for the tenant who has to be running a multi-million-dollar a year top line revenue kind of business if they've got heavy equipment in the yard. But on our end, at an 8.5 cap, I'm at like a $1.8 million valuation. I probably am going to get my tenant faster and easier at the higher rate, all fixed up, move ready, than I am trying to like lease this junker of a building. A lot of people. So if I built the deal on $3 a foot and I bought it, if I can get $450 a foot, it's like a huge swing in value. Right, almost like $700,000-800,000 in value. Plus, we don't even have a tenant right now, so our value's kind of like zero. It's negligible. And I see a lot of people who do that. They make a nice product, and their rent expectations exceed what the pro forma was. We want to be careful when we're structuring our deals on the front end. I didn't structure it with delusional optimism. I only talk about that in my own head or verbally on the side, and it's like part of the reason I'm doing a deal better pencil out at a more conservative pro forma, but I mean, I've lost count of the number of deals where the rents have exceeded that pro forma. I think we're in a dangerous spot in the economy, and I think that now is a good time to be careful with delusional optimism. And a lot of rents actually out there in the market are going to be potentially flat or declining from where we thought they're going to be. So there is some risk out there. You don't hit the rents right. And the rents are very difficult to comp in commercial real estate. It's very difficult to accurately know. Is this $8 a foot? Is it triple net? It's $12 a foot, triple net. I got guys getting $20 a foot. He underwrote his deal on 14. It's nice when it goes that way, but it's very tough to get comparable sale data on other tenants in an area. That can be good. That can also be a risk.
That is the biggest challenge. And then you got the brokers. They're like, oh yeah, I'll get you that number, but I'm going to give them a tenant improvement credit of 6 figures. And you're like, wait, time out. Like, we didn't discuss that. Like, and because they're sales guys, right? The business is trying to get the best deal. They're trying to sell you. This guy's trying to sell you. You're trying to move the needle. And it's commercial is interesting when it comes to that. And I think that's the hurdle that people have trouble jumping. And look, we jumped in all in, both feet, skinny dipping right on in, right? Like, it doesn't matter. And look, there's going to be issues and there's going to be positivity, and it's all going to work out in the end. I mean, I think on the one thing about commercial real estate is to be a positive is you need to be like Warren Buffett and stand the test of time. Over time, any deal will eventually become better. The question is, can you navigate it and direct your deal into that route? Like, let's just talk about your property. How long did you underwrite to be vacant? In the single family space, most people barely even write vacancy. You're like, I'll just rent it out tomorrow. I'm sure you will, but how about your commercial space? How long do you plan on being vacant there?
Well, how long I underwrote and how long I plan are two totally separate things.
Sure.
We bought it occupied with a month-to-month tenant paying like $5,000 a month. He just moved out maybe 30 days ago. So we had it for sale for like high numbers, hoping we would get lucky. Now that he's out, we're going to start the renovation process and try to improve and remarket it at higher numbers for lease and higher numbers for sale. I count on a year probably. It's like, all right, a year worth of vacancy. If it gets to 2 years, we totally can cover that. I can probably cover 3 years or 4 years and still be in the money. If it's vacant, I hope that's not the case after we totally renovate that deal. It's Memphis. There's new ports going in, and it's a logistics cluster in the United States of America, perfectly positioned with FedEx. I mean, we're a mile from FedEx, we're a mile from Amazon. So I hope that when we put our premium product together, I would plan like a 3 to 6 months would be like my ideal outcome. But we're prepared to hold this thing sitting vacant for 2 to 3 years, if need be.
Yeah, it's definitely a big difference. And, and then you got to calculate the money you're putting back into it to say, am I getting the delta on the lease? And it's just an interesting game overall. And I think people need to understand that. And, I'll say there's some immaturity on our level of, oh, well, dude, who wouldn't rent here? And it's like, well, yeah, we think it's cool, but it doesn't mean a business think it's always cool, right? So I would agree that, you need to underwrite and what you plan for two different things and hope for the better. And if not, you got to deal with it. But yeah, it's been real interesting to watch you, listen to you talk about your growth story from where you've come from to where you are today. Before we close it out here, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, and where do you plan on taking your company?
Man, I'm like the least long-term plan kind of guy. If we could do like 25, 30 million profit next year, which would be a little less than double. I mean, that would be like ideal, I think. And I'm trying to crack that code. So for me, it's always been like, 12 months in advance. It's like, what seeds are we going to plant today that hopefully will be harvested in a year? Because 5 years from now, it's like, had you asked that question in 2018, we would have thought, oh, tight inventory, but no one would have seen COVID coming. That was going to reshuffle the way the demand dynamics of the United States operated temporarily, long-term, who knows? So I have no idea where the market will be, which assets will have the cap rate compression and be exciting to us in 5 years. I hope I'm alive. I hope I'm alive here, and my family and friends and you guys and all listeners. I hope we're all here in 5 years. That would be a good start.
That's a fair way. I like how you ducked out of that one with a positive, but no, that is true. Cause just sitting here thinking, Jason and I talk about this all the time. He invests in our deals and some of our deals. And he's always like, dude, just sell, get your money now. I'm like, dude, it'll be fine. He's like, no, sell. I'm like, okay. But now, as you start to have sales in the commercial space, you're like, damn, 7-figure sale, 6-figure sale, making money. And you're like, oh shit, like it does work. And you should start reaping your benefits every year and, get your crops to produce every single year. That's a great way to look at it. Dan, where's the best place people can find you on the internet? They want to learn more about what you guys are doing over there. They want to check out your show. Where's the best place people can find you?
Yeah, go to reidiamonds.com and sign up for my Jewels of Wisdom newsletter. I write that every week on Sunday. It's a lot of psychology. It's a lot of the deals I'm in the process of doing now. If we're offering a deal commercial for sale, that will come out. There'll be a link to our residential offerings. We probably have about 33 of them available that it would fit. It's like investor grade, fix and flip product. I think that is the number right now. So reidiamonds.com. Just put in your email address and subscribe and look out on Sunday.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate all that information. Guys, go check it out. I can tell you it, if you need help with motivation, we'll definitely get you over the hump, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.